serious. What is the saddest thing you've heard someone say? Hey people of Reddit. Today, we're diving into some real feelings about the saddest things you've heard someone say. From heartbreakingly raw moments to those words that stick with you, our community brought the feels. But it's not all tears. Amongst the sadness, there's this amazing thread of empathy and connection. It's pretty powerful stuff. So buckle up as we explore these moments that hit us right in the feels. Get ready for the heartfelt, the moving, and maybe a sprinkle of hope along the way. Number 20. One night about 10:30 p.m., I was going into a local convenience store and saw a child riding his bike barefoot in 40-degree weather. On my way back out of the store, he was still nearby, so I approached him, asking about where his parents were. He told me his dad kicked him out and he was trying to get to his mom's in a neighboring town. I called the local PD, small town, so I knew both responding officers. Turns out he was only 6. Still breaks my heart thinking about it. Number 19. I was at my grandfather's funeral with my family. Never having seen my dad cry, he turns to me in tears and says, "I had the greatest man in the world as a father, and you guys got screwed. This one hurts. Sorry, buddy." Number 18. My grandma, after my uncle, her youngest, passed away in his 40s after a short illness. I'm not sure. I think I'm confused. But, did Mark die? Dementia's a freaking bastard. Reply. My grandma has Alzheimer's and dementia. She asks about her mom and her brother all the time. We tell her they are resting. They've been dead for 25 and 6 years. She once called me in tears because my mom had been visiting, and grandma only realized she'd been there 2 weeks later. She'd been thinking my mom was a nurse and was telling her about her daughter with a temper but a good heart and 4 kids. When she called me, she kept repeating between tears, "I didn't recognize my own daughter. She was there. I didn't recognize my daughter." It's weird to say, but it's better now that she almost has no more lucid moments anymore. She seems way happier, quieter, less angry. We go along with whatever nonsense she speaks and have a good laugh. She doesn't know us anymore, but she's happier. The constant confusion of the past years was maddening. Number 17. I worked with a man who lost his entire family in a house fire. He told me he could hear them screaming but couldn't reach them. Jesus, that's a giant C for survivor guilt. I hope that guy got some help. I can't even imagine that kind of trauma. My dad witnessed some teenage girls burn alive in a terrible car crash when he was younger. He didn't say much other than how terrible it was. We never had candles in the house. Sometimes we would light some around the holidays, and he would blow them out when we were in the other room. Sad. Number 16. A long time ago, I was hanging out in my room when my roommate came home from work. It was silent for a while. He didn't turn on his computer or his switch. He was just sitting in his computer chair. Then I hear him whisper to himself, "I miss you, Dad," and he starts sobbing. I found out that morning was when his dad passed away from a brain tumor. It was indeed a sad day for many. Number 15. We were helping mind 2 children of someone who a relative used to mind every so often from across the road. After an hour here or there over the course of a week, they came up to us and asked if they could come to stay with my partner and me as we would play with them, and no one plays with them at home. They were generally known as naughty kids, but were brilliant with us. It was a gut-wrenching feeling having 2 young children look at you with hope and not really being in a situation to help. Number 14. Walked by a mom and a boy who was crying. I was walking longer ahead when I heard the mom say, "You're a 10-year-old boy. Stop crying like an autistic." I'm autistic myself, and that broke my heart. Number 13. My wife and I were foster parents. We went to an event with our foster child at the local Museum of Science and Industry for foster kids. The museum had a rope obstacle course that was way up in the air. Kids at the event were not allowed to do it because they are in state care, and there are limitations on what activities are deemed dangerous. For instance, our child could not be on a trampoline or ride a motorcycle. The cutest little girl, maybe 6 years old, told my wife, "I hope someday somebody wants me and I can go up there." I cried just typing this. Freaking me. Number 12. Back in that time when I was in Greece, I saw this beautiful little child whose both of her parents died in Syria. She was sleeping on a field in the middle of nowhere. It turns out she was trying to cross the borders to Germany, and she came with relatives but lost her way. I managed to get her some warm soup in a camping tent. While me and my team in Germany used to drive with tea to serve them, we'd also managed to find her relatives after looking for them for straight 8 hours from camp to camp. God, till this day I can't forget how sad and heartbroken she was. I hope she is well today. Number 11. I used to work at a school, and there was one kid who we all suspected strongly that she was being neglected by her mom. This kid would show up dirty and disheveled, constantly had lice, and was overall not well cared for. On her birthday, her mom was supposed to visit her at school. The whole day before the mom came, this kid was excited as to see her mom, basically acknowledge her birthday. Just as we got word that her mom had come, the kid said excitedly, "I hope my mom gives me a kiss." I had to step out after hearing that. Number 10. When my bro died and we went to see him in the funeral director. The way my dad patted his shoulder and said, "Right, I'm going now," the same way he would say it after we had visited to have dinner or something. But there was just a finality to it which made me realize we'd never see him again. It crushed me. Reply. My father was suffering from Alzheimer's, and for a few weeks before his birthday he kept saying, "I'm going to go see my mother." I knew exactly what he meant by that. Total gut punch. My mother at OH was as usual completely clueless. "John, your mother is dead." And yeah, she definitely shouldn't have been so blunt about that. But while my father was completely senile by this point, he meant what he said, and he wasn't talking about getting in a car or a plane. 3 days after his birthday, 11 years ago today, he died. Number 9. When my grandpa said that old people are good for nothing and aren't needed anymore. I work for a medical transportation company, and we take a lot of older folks, most of whom have medical issues and are on their way out. Their wisdom, resilience, and little personal quirks never cease to make my day. I appreciate the life of the elderly immensely. They have been through so much, and life doesn't get any easier. I always try my best to stay kind and mindful, even when they are rude, knowing that they are dealing with something I will never understand, at least not for another 50 years. Old people are great and have the best stories. Tell Gramps to tell you one. Remind him that he is loved and cherished. Most of the time, I find that they are just lonely, which I think would make anyone feel worthless. Number 8. I've never told anyone this before. My grandfather loved watermelon and my mother loved watermelon, and she said watermelon will always make her happy. When my grandfather was on his deathbed, all he talked about was how my mom, his adopted daughter, his favorite child, was growing watermelons in the backyard. The watermelon plant was just barely beginning to form fruit when my grandfather had to be taken to the hospital for a long-term stay. Every day he would talk about how he needed to get home in time for the watermelon to be ripe. He was a feisty old man and at some point tried to escape the hospital. He cut holes in the hospital pillow covers and wore it like a tunic and got so far as the street before staff realized he was missing. They brought him back, and my mother told me that he was sobbing and that he just wanted to go home and eat watermelon. He passed away about a week later. My mother was distraught, and she stopped tending to her garden, and the watermelon never ripened. It's been 6 years since, and my mother still won't grow watermelon, because watermelon doesn't make me happy anymore. Number 7. I kinda wish you would have died instead of your brother. Context: when I was 23, my 21-year-old brother died. My mom and my brother had a very toxic relationship, whereas she and I had a decent one. And she said this because if I had died, she wouldn't have felt as much guilt. It was as much of a failure because she and I were good. But with my brother, there was just so much regret, and things left unhealed. Number 6. First thing that comes to mind is one time my grandpa was dealing with dementia. My mom and I had stopped by to visit him, and he thought we were homeless strangers. He said that there were spare beds and food for us if we needed them. I didn't understand what he was saying until my mom explained it to me. He died in 2018, and I never got to truly say goodbye to him. I still miss him. Number 5. I will never in my life forget the sound of my sister's voice when she called to say her kid died. We all knew it was coming. She was born like 12 weeks early, had a brain bleed, a bunch of other issues. Doctors already told them if she survived, she would have severe mental and physical disabilities, etc. But the sheer heartbreak in her voice. Number 4. My dad, now in his 70s, said to me a few years ago, "When you're younger, people see you when they're walking past you. You might briefly make eye contact, and they'll notice your presence. But when you're older, nobody sees you anymore." It really broke my heart to hear him say that. Obviously, he's one of the most important people in the world to me, and to think that he feels unseen just makes me feel so sad. Number 3. Was in bed next to my husband. It was nighttime, and he was pretty much half asleep. He started telling me about how he was sexually assaulted when he was around preschool age. This was all news to me, and ended it by saying, "Why did they do that to me?" Broke my heart, and he didn't even remember telling me about it the next day. Number 2. I forget exactly where it was or what I was doing, but I had just given my wife a hug in a public place, and then she left to go do something. I settled down on my phone, but I guess I was smiling a lot, and this kid asked me why I was smiling so much about a hug. I told him it was because it just made me feel all warm and fuzzy inside. He asked what I meant by that, and so after I thought for a second, I told him it was like the feeling he got when his mom and dad told him they loved him. He sat there for a moment before responding, "I don't really know what that's like. They never say that." He didn't look sad either, just said it like you might say anything you observe at a given point in time. Broke my heart. Number 1. My grandpa had a stroke about 10 years ago and was bedbound for 2 to 3 years after at home. My grandma was just starting to suffer from dementia. We got a call one Sunday morning that grandpa died. The whole family started to head over to their house. The funeral director came to take his body and asked us to all go into another room while they took him out. During this, grandma seemed to only partially understand what was happening. The funeral director let us know they would be wheeling him out shortly and would have to pass the room we were in on their way outside. Everyone was quiet as they wheeled the stretcher to the door when grandma said, "Bye, Frank." That just freaking me. Thanks for joining us on this heartfelt journey through the saddest things people have shared. Your stories hit us right in the feels. Don't forget to drop a like if you resonated with these emotional tales and share your thoughts in the comments below. Subscribe and hit that bell to keep diving into these deep discussions with us. Your support means everything. Keep spreading kindness, and until next time, take care everyone.